Karen thought the honor guards were just part of a tourist show until she stood in their way, smirking unmoving, convinced they'd go around her. But when the guards marched forward without hesitation, she learned the hard way that tradition and discipline don't bow to entitlement. Before we continue, let us know where you're watching from. We read every comment. This is the Honor Guard, a channel dedicated to stories of duty, tradition, and the quiet courage that still lives on today. If you believe in the values that shape generations, honor, sacrifice, and respect, we invite you to subscribe. Every day we bring you true moments that remind us some things are still worth standing for. The afternoon sun blazed down on Arlington National Cemetery, bathing the rows of white marble headstones in a reverent glow. The quiet carried a weight that even the breeze seemed unwilling to disturb. Families gathered to pay respects, tourists snapped photos in hushed tones, and in the middle of it all, the honor guard moved with solemn precision, each polished shoe landing on the walkway with measured certainty. Melissa Parker, 56 years old and sporting a pair of wedge sandals with rhinestones along the strap, could not have cared less about all that. The heat was making her sweat, and in her mind this entire ceremony was nothing but an outdated bit of pageantry. She had a lunch reservation across town in an hour, and no line of silent onlookers or stiff-backed soldiers was going to slow her down. With an impatient huff, Melissa shifted her oversized designer tote to her other shoulder, the wedge sandal she'd slipped off dangling from her hand like a weapon. A boy nearby stared at her with wide eyes as she muttered under her breath, "These toy soldiers wouldn't last a minute in a real fight." A cemetery volunteer in a navy polo tried gently to intervene. "Ma'am, please stay behind the barrier. The honor guard will be passing through momentarily." Melissa shot him a scornful look. "Are you kidding me? I pay taxes. I can stand wherever I please. This is a free country, remember?" The volunteer sighed the same way you'd sigh at a toddler about to touch a hot stove. "Ma'am, they won't stop for you." Melissa laughed a sharp bark that turned a few heads. "Oh, they'll stop. They see me standing here waving my sandal, they'll think twice." The volunteer stepped back, giving her one last sad glance. "Suit yourself." Melissa planted herself right in front of the ceremonial route, sandals in one hand, cell phone in the other, scanning for a perfect angle. In her mind, she was the star of her own personal reality show. She hadn't come all this way to be told to stand quietly behind a rope line. Nearby, an older couple holding a small American flag gently tried to coax their granddaughter into a respectful hush. The girl watched Melissa with confusion, asking in a whisper, "Grandma, why is that lady yelling?" Grandma only patted her shoulder. "Some people don't understand what respect means, honey." Melissa heard them, of course, but it only made her stand taller. She had grown up believing rules were for other people, not for her. All her life she'd gotten her way by being loud, by being relentless, by refusing to back down. She wasn't about to let a bunch of fancy uniform statues get in the way of her schedule. In the distance, a steady drum beat began to echo across the sacred grounds. It was a sound that sent a ripple through the gathered crowd, a silent cue that the honor guard's precision march had begun. People adjusted their phones to capture the moment parents lifted small children onto their shoulders, and the respectful hush deepened. Melissa smirked as she watched the approaching figures' bright white gloves and gleaming rifles. "Watch this," she told no one in particular, waving her sandal through the air in a mocking little dance. "I'll show them how to do their job right." A retired Army sergeant, medals glinting on his blazer, stepped forward from the line of bystanders. His voice was calm, firm, carrying the weight of lived experience. "Ma'am, please. I'm asking you, one veteran to another American, don't disrespect them. They will not stop for you." Melissa scoffed. "Who do you think you are, old man? I'll stand wherever I want." His jaw clenched, but he didn't argue further. Some lessons he knew from hard years of service could only be learned the hard way. As the measured steps of the honor guard drew closer, Melissa planted her wedge sandal firmly in front of her as if daring them to defy her. She had no idea that she was seconds away from one of the hardest lessons of her life. The cadence of the honor guard's march echoed across the hushed cemetery, a rhythm so perfect it almost felt inhuman. Every tourist's breath seemed to catch as the line of soldiers advanced their focus, unbroken, their discipline absolute. Melissa, standing squarely in their path with a wedge sandal still in hand, felt a surge of misplaced power. She mistook the respectful silence of the crowd for an endorsement of her behavior, as though her little tantrum had gathered its own fan club. "They're really going to try it," she chuckled to herself. "They think they're going to just march right through me." The older army sergeant, still standing respectfully behind the rope lines, shook his head. His voice was tired but edged with the kind of authority that only came from seeing far worse than entitled tourists. "Ma'am, I'm telling you, they are not going to stop." Melissa shot him a glare, brandishing her sandal as if it were a royal scepter. "If they come near me, I swear I'll smack one of them with this. Maybe that'll teach them some customer service." The disrespect was so sharp, it made a mother nearby clutch her child closer. Tourists began murmuring, glancing uneasily from Melissa to the honor guard, torn between secondhand embarrassment and genuine fear of what might happen next. A palace security guard, young and clearly trying to maintain calm, stepped forward. "Ma'am, please, you need to move behind the line. You've been warned." Melissa's laughter was mocking and shrill. "Or what? What are you going to do? Arrest me for standing on a public sidewalk with a shoe?" He hesitated, as if wanting to reason with her again, but the measured stomp of the honor guard was nearly upon them. There was no more time for reason. In the gathering tension, Melissa turned to face the guards full on, one hand on her hip, the sandal poised like a weapon. "Let's see them get past me," she sneered. The first guard, face like stone eyes fixed far beyond Melissa, kept marching in perfect tempo. His gleaming black boots advanced with chilling certainty. The formation behind him was equally unwavering, rifles, gleaming gloves, immaculate discipline woven into every single step. "They'll stop," Melissa muttered, a bead of sweat rolling down her cheek. But there was a flicker of doubt now, a split second where she realized the guards weren't even acknowledging her existence. The security guard's voice rose desperately. "Ma'am, final warning, step aside." Melissa waved him off with the same sandal. "Save your breath." The honor guard's commander, observing from a short distance, nodded to his men, a subtle sign that no obstacle, no matter how entitled, would break their precision or purpose. The guards had trained for moments of disrespect, moments of interruption, and knew exactly how to handle them. The drumbeat grew louder, each strike of the snare vibrating through the courtyard. The air itself seemed to tighten as Melissa refused to yield, standing squarely in front of the approaching unit, a single wedge sandal clutched in her hand like some ridiculous protest banner. A tourist recording the scene whispered, "This is going to end badly." The retired veteran crossed his arms, his face grim. Some people have to learn respect the hard way. Melissa, still convinced the show was about her, began taunting the soldiers even more loudly. "Look at you. You think you're so tough. Walking around in costumes, I'll tell you what. Try getting a real job." A collective gasp rose from the onlookers. This wasn't harmless heckling anymore. This was an open act of mockery aimed straight at the heart of a tradition built on sacrifice. The front guard, taller than the others, his jaw set with steel, kept advancing, eyes locked straight ahead. He did not flinch. He did not slow. His entire being was fused with an unspoken code of respect, one that did not recognize Melissa's petty tantrum. A ripple of uneasy excitement spread through the crowd. Parents reached for their children's shoulders, drawing them closer as the unstoppable formation approached. Melissa shifted, her weight sandal raised high, ready to swing at the slightest provocation. "Let's see how tough you are now." The security guard shouted, "Clear the path now." Melissa did not move. As the first honor guard stepped within arm's reach, the entire scene seemed to freeze. For a breathless instant, the world hung in suspense. And then tradition and discipline, collided with pure, unfiltered arrogance. The drumline pounded a cadence that felt like a living heartbeat rolling through the courtyard. The first guard advanced posture so perfect it might have been carved from stone eyes set beyond Melissa, as though she were nothing but a faint shadow on the path. The entire unit behind him moved as one, every step synchronized, each moment measured by centuries of unbroken discipline. Melissa's smirk widened into a twisted grin as she gripped her wedge sandal higher, its rhinestones catching the sunlight like a cheap crown. "Let's see if you're man enough to step around me," she sneered. For a second, the crowd seemed to hold its breath. The hush was so deep that even the breeze across the marble stones seemed to falter. The guard's boots hit the ancient walkway with a rhythmic finality. 1, 2, 3, 4, unstoppable. "Ma'am," the security guard shouted again, his voice nearly cracking under the pressure. "I'm begging you, please stand aside." Melissa stood her ground, planting her feet with the arrogance of someone who had always believed consequences were for other people. She flung the sandal higher, as if brandishing it like a weapon. "I'm not afraid of your little toy soldiers." The tourists watching from behind the barriers grew silent, their cameras trained on the scene with a morbid sense of inevitability. A father reached down to grip his young son's shoulder. "Remember, son," he whispered, "some folks learn the hard way." Melissa ignored the crowd spinning to pose with her phone for a quick selfie 1 foot halfway into the ceremonial route. Her voice dripped sarcasm as she mocked cheese. "Look at the big scary soldiers coming to get me." The first guard closed the distance with unblinking focus, no hint of emotion crossing his face. The wedge sandal waving in Melissa's hand might as well have been invisible to him. His duty was clear. His route was set. Melissa lowered her phone to shout directly at him, her voice cracking. "Hey, I'm talking to you. Don't you know who I am?" He did not answer. He would not answer. The next steps of the unit fell into place with a mechanical perfection that bordered on holy. The polished boots, the crisp white gloves, the bayonet-tipped rifles gleaming under the afternoon sun. These were not costumes for show, but the living symbols of sacrifice and honor. The veteran in the crowd nodded slowly, as if bracing himself for what came next. "That boy has served," he muttered, voice rough. "He's earned the right not to be mocked." Melissa took a half-step forward, waving the sandal in his face like a spoiled child threatening a tantrum. "Back off," she yelled, "or I'll hit you with this, I swear." Still no response. No flinch. No hesitation. As the unit advanced, the final notes of the drumline seemed to hit a crescendo, charging the air with a power that felt as old as the land itself. Melissa's nerve began to crack. The heat, the stares, the unbroken rhythm of the soldiers bearing down on her. For the first time, she wondered if she had pushed too far. But there was no time to retreat. The guard was right there. His final step landed inches from her wedge sandal. Melissa froze, mouth parted, unable to comprehend that he truly would not stop. And then in one fluid motion, so practiced it seemed effortless, the guard shifted his shoulder just enough to clear her from his path, the movement as disciplined as any combat maneuver. His shoulder struck Melissa with enough force to unbalance her, but so precisely measured that it seemed almost gentle. Almost. Melissa let out a shriek as the wedge sandal flew from her hand, clattering across the stones. Her phone spun away in the opposite direction, its screen shattering on the unforgiving walkway. Her arms flailed in a helpless attempt to grab onto anything, but there was nothing to save her. In a moment of perfect, devastating clarity, Melissa Parker understood the meaning of unstoppable tradition. The honor guard did not stop. They did not break formation. They marched straight through the place where her arrogance had tried to stand. As Melissa crumpled to the stones, the guard's boots passed so close she could smell the polish. His eyes never wavered. His focus never shifted. He marched on as if she were a fallen leaf on the sidewalk. Tourists gasped, a mix of shock and dark satisfaction rippling through the onlookers. Phones recorded every second, eager to capture the instant karma that had arrived like a thunderbolt. The veteran watched his face impassive and gave a single nod of respect toward the honor guard's discipline. Melissa lay sprawled, one hand throbbing from the impact, the other searching frantically for her phone. Her pride stung worse than any bruise. She scrambled to her knees, face flushed, eyes wild. He hit me," she wailed. "Did you see that he assaulted me?" But the honor guard had already marched on their boots, a moving monument to values far older and stronger than one woman's tantrum. Melissa was left behind, humiliated, her rhinestone sandal lying in the dust as a testament to how quickly karma can land when you wave it in the face of honor. Melissa's scream cut through the silence like a siren, raw and indignant. "Did you see that he attacked me?" Her voice bounced off the marble walls, loud enough to startle a flock of pigeons from a nearby monument. She tried to stand, but her knees buckled again, and she landed awkwardly on the hot stones, the shattered phone skidding away. Her prized wedge sandal, the same one she'd waved like a cheap scepter, lay 10 feet behind her, the rhinestones scuffed and dull. The honor guard, meanwhile, continued on boots, pounding a flawless cadence that seemed to echo all the way to the rows of white headstones beyond. Their formation stayed tight, unbroken, unstoppable, their focus untouched by Melissa's spectacle. She scrambled upright again, voice hoarse with outrage. "You can't just knock me down. Who do you think you are?" One of the guards, the tall one, who had shouldered her aside, gave not so much as a glance in her direction. His eyes remained trained forward, a 1,000-yard stare that spoke of more than ceremonial tradition. It spoke of discipline forged in real battlefields of brothers, lost of country, defended. Melissa's protests fell on the same silence that had swallowed countless entitled voices before hers. "Someone do something," she shrieked, scanning the faces of the crowd. No one stepped forward to support her. A mother with 2 children pulled them closer, as if shielding them from the raw collapse of Melissa's pride. A young tourist whispered to her boyfriend, "Serves her right." The cemetery security officer, who had tried to warn her earlier, approached carefully. "Ma'am," he began, his voice calm but edged with exhaustion. "You need to stay off the ceremonial route." Melissa's mouth twisted in rage. "Stay off! Stay off! After what they just did, I want his name. I want his badge." The officer sighed. "They're soldiers, ma'am. They don't wear badges, they wear rank." She opened her mouth to fire back another insult, but the older veteran stepped forward, medals glinting on his chest, his face carved with the lines of hard-earned wisdom. "Ma'am," he said gently, "you were warned. That path is sacred. They don't stop for anyone, not even you." Melissa's eyes blazed. "Sacred? This is a public sidewalk." The veteran's jaw tightened. "It's more than that. It's a place of honor. You disrespected it." Melissa's voice dropped an octave, now a hiss. "I don't care about your little show of honor. That thug slammed into me on purpose. He needs to apologize." Security officer's face didn't even flinch. "Ma'am, they will not break protocol for your feelings." The guard's boots had already carried him halfway across the courtyard, his posture as perfect as if the moment had never happened. It was as though Melissa had been brushed aside by the living embodiment of tradition itself, something too large, too dignified, too ancient to be moved by petty tantrums. She snatched up her broken phone, trying to gather the scattered pieces. I'll sue every one of you," she raged, tears of frustration welling. The veteran gave her a sad shake of the head. "You can try," he replied, "but you were in the wrong place, and you were warned." Melissa tried to stand taller, brushing grit off her expensive blouse, but her pride had been left crumpled on the ground, along with the rhinestone wedge. A couple of teenagers with their phones still rolling shouted from behind the barrier, "Hey Karen, how's that karma?" Melissa spun to glare at them, momentarily silenced by the wave of shame sweeping over her. The security officer stepped closer. "Ma'am, you need to clear the ceremonial path immediately, or I will escort you out." Her jaw clenched. I have every right to be here. But her voice was smaller now, choked by the realization that no one, not a soul in the courtyard, would stand by her side. Behind her, the guard formation executed a flawless pivot facing the tomb of the unknowns. They presented arms rifles gleaming like 100 years of history distilled into polished steel. Melissa's breathing quickened her rage, fighting a losing battle against the cold slap of humiliation. "You can't treat me like this." She tried again, but the words fell flat, echoing uselessly across the courtyard. The veteran spoke quietly, leaning closer so only she could hear. "Respect is earned," he told her, "and so is disgrace." Melissa opened her mouth, but nothing came out. She clutched the battered wedge sandal against her chest like a broken trophy, the rhinestones dull and cracked. It was all that was left of the small power she thought she'd wielded. The drumline faded, replaced by the stillness of the honor ceremony itself. It was a stillness as steady and final as a gravestone. For the first time that day, Melissa Parker found herself without an audience, without an ally, and without the illusion that she could bend the world to her will. In the face of true discipline and timeless tradition, the petty rage of one entitled visitor had no chance at all. Melissa stood there, shoulders hunched, clutching her broken sandal, with all the determination of a drowning woman reaching for driftwood. But no matter how tightly she gripped it, the rhinestone wedge could not restore the shred of dignity she'd lost. The guards, meanwhile, completed their precision maneuver as if nothing had happened, rifles snapping to their shoulders in a perfect display of synchronized respect. Every eye in their line seemed to hold centuries of service behind them, immune to any attempts at mockery. The drumline fell silent. The cemetery returned to its solemn hush. Melissa's voice, raw with fury, broke that hush. "You can't just ignore me," she screamed, advancing on the security officer. "He assaulted me. That was an assault, and I want him arrested." The officer kept his voice measured, calm, like someone who had dealt with 1,000 Karens before. "Ma'am, you interfered with a ceremonial route. You refused multiple lawful instructions. The guard acted according to protocol." Melissa's jaw quivered, outrage burning through her. "Protocol? You think it's protocol to body slam a woman? I'm an American citizen." A group of tourists, still holding their phones in hesitant disbelief, continued filming. The word Karen could be heard whispered again and again among the crowd. The older veteran stepped forward, adjusting the line of medals on his breast pocket. His voice was steady, as though he'd been called on to explain discipline more times than he could count. "Ma'am," he said gently, "the guards have one job. That job is to honor and protect without distraction, without deviation. They have trained for years never to break formation. You were warned repeatedly." Melissa swung the broken sandal like a lawyer brandishing Exhibit A. "This is evidence," she cried. "He knocked me over so hard my shoe broke." The veteran's eyes darkened. "It's just a shoe, ma'am. And you're lucky that's all you lost today." His tone was calm, but the words carried the weight of soldiers who'd seen far worse and paid far more for the right to stand in uniform. The security officer gently tried again. "Ma'am, you are welcome to file a formal complaint if you wish, but you must step away from the ceremonial path. Now." Melissa's lips drew back into a sneer. "File a complaint? I'll do more than that. I'll sue every single one of you. You think you're above the law? You think you can knock people over just because you're wearing some clown uniform?" At that, a ripple went through the gathered onlookers. For so many, the sight of the honor guard was sacred, a living tribute to those who had given everything. To hear someone call it a clown uniform felt like spitting on a grave. One of the teenage tourists, still holding her phone, called out, "Lady, go home. You embarrassed yourself enough." Melissa spun, eyes wild. "Shut up. You don't know what you're talking about." But her voice had lost its teeth. It was desperation now, shrill and hollow, ringing in the air like a bell no one wanted to answer. Suddenly, 2 uniformed police officers stepped through the crowd. One, a woman with calm eyes and a notebook in hand, approached Melissa with practiced caution. Ma'am, my name is Officer Rains with Arlington Police. I understand there was an incident. Melissa latched onto her like a drowning swimmer grabbing a lifeguard. Yes, there was an assault on me. That soldier body slammed me. Look at this. She thrust her scraped hand toward the officer. Officer Rains gave a professional nod but made no move to arrest anyone. Can you tell me please what happened from the beginning? Melissa's words tumbled over themselves, each one fighting to be louder than the last. They attacked me. They refused to stop. I told them I was standing here, and they walked right through me. The second officer, a tall man with a military bearing himself, was interviewing the veteran and several other witnesses. Each of them told the same story Melissa had been warned again and again, but refused to move. One mother, still holding her little girl, spoke up. She was waving her shoe at them like she was trying to hit someone, she explained, voice shaking. I was afraid she was going to hurt them. Melissa spun on her heel. That's a lie. That is a lie. I was defending myself. The police officers exchanged a look, professional, calm, impossible to read. Officer Rains turned back to her notebook. Ma'am, interfering with a ceremonial guard is a serious matter. We have multiple witness statements indicating you refused repeated lawful instructions to move. Melissa's mouth fell open. Are you saying I'm in trouble? They trampled me. The officer kept her tone even. The ceremonial guard is authorized to remove obstacles from their route. Their orders are to maintain formation under all circumstances. Your actions today could be considered obstruction. The color drained from Melissa's face. I want a supervisor. She tried, a note of panic creeping in. This is ridiculous. Behind her, the guard commander finally approached, white gloves. Immaculate voice, grave but respectful. Ma'am, he began. The Queen's Guard does not deviate from its assigned route. The protocol is centuries old. We protect the dignity of the fallen and no one interrupts that duty. Melissa nearly choked on her next words. But this is a tourist attraction. The commander's eyes hardened. This is a place of respect. It is a place of remembrance, and it will never be reduced to a tourist show, no matter how you treat it. Melissa fell silent, her chest heaving, the broken wedge sandal limp in her hand like a rag. In that moment, no one needed to say another word. Her own humiliation spoke louder than any lecture ever could. Officer Rains stood firm, notebook in hand, her calm gaze never wavering. Ma'am, as I explained, she said gently but firmly, the guards have a legally designated path that cannot be obstructed. They gave you multiple lawful warnings to clear the route. Your failure to comply placed you at risk. Melissa's face twitched, a tremor of disbelief flashing across her features. Are you kidding me? She spat, voice ragged with rage. They walked right through me like I was nothing. The second officer, who'd finished speaking with the witnesses, stepped forward. His presence was calm and authoritative, carrying a subtle military edge. Ma'am, he explained, several witnesses confirmed you brandished your sandal in a threatening manner, blocked the ceremonial path, and ignored repeated warnings. Melissa was trembling now, her righteous fury colliding head-on with the solid wall of consequence. But they hit me, she insisted. They hit me and stepped on my hand. That's battery. Officer Rains gently shook her head. Ma'am, under protocol, they are authorized to clear obstacles. They executed that maneuver with the minimum necessary force. Your injuries appear minor. Melissa held up her scraped hand, tears of frustration welling. Minor. Look at this. The older veteran stepped closer, offering a kind but iron-edged voice. That is nothing compared to what those men have seen on deployment, ma'am. You are lucky it was only a bruise. Melissa's eyes darted, searching for allies in the silent, staring crowd. There were none. Even the tourists who had filmed every humiliating second looked away. She took a shaky breath, shifting back to outrage mode. I'm going to sue, she hissed. I'll own this whole place by the time I'm done. I have lawyers, the best lawyers. The second officer remained unfazed. Ma'am, you are free to pursue any civil action you wish. However, please understand that you may also be facing charges today." Her head snapped up. "Me on what grounds?" The officer consulted his notebook, ticking off calmly. "Interfering with military personnel in the execution of their duties, disturbing the peace and failure to comply with lawful instructions." Melissa's voice broke, half laugh, half sob. "You can't be serious. You can't arrest me for this." Officer Raines stayed professional, her voice measured. "Ma'am, if you refuse to cooperate further, we can take you into custody, or you can accompany us voluntarily to file your formal statement. That is your choice." The color drained from Melissa's face. For the first time, she seemed to realize this was no petty theme park reenactment. There would be no manager to call, no one to apologize to her. Behind her, the honor guard had finished its measured turn and resumed its sacred watch. They stood like living statues, a monument to something larger than any one person's tantrum. The veteran stepped forward, his voice thick with emotion. "You know," he said to her quietly, "every one of those men would lay down his life to protect you if needed. That is what service means. That is what those boots stand for." Melissa could only shake her head, lips trembling. "I didn't know. I thought they were just—" The veteran cut her off with a sad smile. "You thought wrong." Melissa's shoulders slumped, the rage finally ebbing away, replaced by a hollow confusion. "I just wanted a picture," she mumbled, as if trying to rewrite the last 20 minutes of her life. The older officer nodded solemnly. "And you chose the worst way to get it." For a moment, a profound silence settled over the crowd. Even the children sensed its weight. The two police officers conferred in low voices, then turned back to Melissa. Officer Raines spoke softly. "Ma'am, we will escort you to the station to formally document what happened today. You have the right to contact counsel, and you will have a chance to present your side of events. Do you understand?" Melissa's chin quivered. "Do I do? I have to be handcuffed." Officer Raines hesitated, then shook her head. "No, ma'am, as long as you come willingly." Melissa nodded stiffly. Even in defeat, she tried to cling to a shred of control, raising her chin in a last act of defiance. "Fine, but you'll all be sorry. You'll see." The older veteran exhaled, looking tired but strangely satisfied. "Some people," he murmured to the second officer, "can only learn the hard way." The officer nodded. "Yes, sir." As they began to lead Melissa toward the exit, the honor guard remained unwavering, a pillar of timeless tradition and dignified silence. Their watch continued undisturbed. In that moment, the wedge sandal, battered rhinestones missing, lay forgotten on the ground. It was all that was left of Melissa's misguided sense of power. And it was a perfect symbol of how quickly karma can arrive when you try to challenge honor with arrogance. The hush that followed Melissa's exit settled over the courtyard like a respectful shroud. Tourists who had borne silent witness to the entire humiliating scene turned back toward the honor guard as if seeking to wash away the memory of her tantrum by honoring something greater. The guards continued their watch, boots, polished rifles, gleaming shoulders, squared in a posture earned through sweat, discipline, and sacrifice. There was no sign in their bearing that anything had disrupted them, no hint that one woman's entitled rage had pierced their armor of tradition. A little boy tugged at his grandfather's sleeve. "Pop," he whispered, "why didn't that soldier stop when she yelled?" The grandfather, a veteran himself, his cap proudly displaying Vietnam service, knelt down so the boy could hear every word. "Because, son," he said quietly, "when you stand for honor, you don't back down for disrespect. You stand your ground." The boy's eyes widened. "Even if someone's mad?" "Especially then," the grandfather said, a note of pride deepening his voice. A young woman holding a phone who had filmed the entire spectacle put it away as though ashamed. She turned to the veteran, voice soft. "I didn't know they were real soldiers. I thought it was like Disneyland or something." The veteran's face gentled, though his eyes were still firm. "They're as real as you and me. More real sometimes. They stand guard over every sacrifice that came before us. They don't do it for cheers. They do it for respect." He patted the boy's shoulder one more time before standing straight again. As the drum struck up once more, the honor guard executed another perfect turn, their movements a testament to something bigger than any single person. Their duty was a living tribute to all who had fallen and all who might yet stand in their place. No wedge sandal, no loud voice, no entitled attitude could ever stand in the way of that. Melissa's tantrum would live on in internet videos, no doubt a cautionary tale for years to come. But in the grand scheme of that sacred place, she was as small as a leaf in a hurricane, brushed aside, forgotten, irrelevant to the mission of the men and women who keep watch. The veteran watched as the formation marched past once more unbroken. His heart ached with quiet gratitude that some things were still respected, still defended, still preserved through centuries. He turned to the people beside him, lifting his voice enough for all to hear. "That's what discipline looks like," he said. "That's what honor feels like. Remember it. Teach your children about it. Because that," he gestured toward the guards, moving in perfect precision, "is worth more than any social media moment." A hush fell again. Heads nodded. Even the children seemed to understand. As the final note of the drum line rang out and the guards resumed their silent watch, the crowd dispersed with a new reverence. They had witnessed more than a tourist's outburst. They had seen living proof that true respect cannot be bought, screamed, or demanded. It can only be earned and protected. Melissa's wedge sandal still lay where it had fallen. Rhinestones dulled the leather scuffed, and it would remain there for a moment, like a footnote to a story nobody wanted to repeat. Eventually, a groundskeeper would pick it up, shaking his head, carrying it away to the lost, and found where it would gather dust as a final monument to Melissa's hard lesson. The honor guard carried on boots striking stone with steady purpose. Nothing could disrupt them, not even the chaos of modern entitlement. They stood for those who could no longer stand. They marched for those who would never march again. And they taught in their silent way that some values will never bow to arrogance, no matter how loudly it tries to make itself heard. If there was a moral written into the stones of Arlington that day, it was this: respect isn't outdated, and sometimes karma arrives faster than you think, especially when you wave a sandal at honor. If you have ever seen someone mistake service for a show, or if you've stood up for those who defend our freedoms, let us know in the comments below. We'd love to hear your story. Please like this video to honor those who stand guard and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss any more powerful lessons in duty, respect, and tradition. We'll see you tomorrow, same time, with another true story about what happens when arrogance meets immovable courage. Until then, remember, some traditions endure for a reason.